So, good morning to one and all, and respected Dr. Binu Bhimnath, the HOD, Department of Philosophy, University of Kerala, and other respected teachers, colleagues, friends, research scholars, and students. It's a great honor and privilege to be part of this national webinar series, which is partly done offline as well. And in connection with the World Philosophy Day, uh, we are organizing and we are into this collective venture online. And let us hope that let this be a new beginning in the post-COVID uh, scenario in the academia in Kerala. So today we are discussing about a very important topic on the democratic visions of Kerala by one of the makers of modern Kerala, Kerala modernity itself, Sahodaran Ayyappan. Sahodaran Ayyappan, as we know, he was a great social revolutionary. He was a community leader. He was a cultural activist. He was an editor and journalist. He was a writer, prose writer, and a poet as well. So he was a multifaceted kind of a personality. And people like Sahodaran, especially after the break provided by the great visionary of Kerala modernity, Narayana Guru himself in late 19th century and in early part of the 20th century, it was his lead disciples, very talented and versatile kind of activists and organizers and defiant activists, political thinkers and activists and practitioners like Sahodaran who have actually foregrounded the politics of the people, the larger collectivity movements that transformed the culture and society and polity in Kerala and led towards the modernization of Kerala. So we are actually critically rethinking about that modernity, popularly called the Renaissance modernity of Kerala, while we are critically re-evaluating the contributions and the visions and philosophical praxis of people like Sahodaran. So it becomes a critique of modernity at large and also a critique of the personality of Kerala. If you use a term from another distinguished multidisciplinary scholar, Professor Ayyappan, who was also the vice chancellor, the former vice chancellor of the University of Kerala. So, if you use that term from one of his title, it is drawn from his title. It is something like the personality of Kerala. So the personality of Kerala, the cultural identity of Kerala, and the what you call the democratic credential and the trajectory of the modernity in Kerala. That is what is being under scrutiny, under critique, and close examination when we talk about Sahodaran and his guru in particular. So we need to think about the fashioning of modernity, the fashioning of democracy, the fashioning of a public social sphere in Kerala, and the creation of that public sphere from a ruined state of affairs. Because till the early 20th century, or at least till Sahodaran and his acts and the interventions of the Guru, the revolutions, the social revolutions that happened in Kerala from the early 19th century onwards, especially at the advent of the Western European forces and the missionary intervention, the Christian evangelical missions in Kerala. You have unprecedented forms of social upheavals and turmoils and effective social change that have happened in early 19th century. So as a result of this advent of modernity, though it is in the colonial context, though it is a partly diluted and compromised form of modernity, though it is critically called colonial modernity and the missionary modernity and so on and so forth, this advent of modernity, the values of equality, the notions of the human, the notions of reason, the notion of a society and a regulated mechanism of a political system, administrative system. These notions have paved the foundation for the actual social change, unprecedented change, because society was stagnant here, especially under the casteist regime of the Varnashrama Dharma project here in India, at least for the last thousands of years, at least from the 8th or 10th century CE onwards, Kerala was actually reeling under the internal imperialism of caste. So the external imperialism, the European colonialism, has become a relief of sort, somewhat kind of break and relief, at least for the people at the bottom. The vast majority of the people, for the Dalit Bahujans in this country, the Avarnas or the former untouchables, the casted away people of India, the vast majority of multitudes in India, this European intervention and the European advent of modernity, these were at least a partial relief from the age-old, millennia-old shackles of internal imperialism and cultural hegemony. So that is the premise on which we need to build up or further go into the details of this social revolution and the democratic kind of transformations that have happened in early and mid 20th century during the time of Sahodaran. So Sahodaran, as we know, he was born towards the end of the 19th century. He was born 1 year after that historic consecration or installation by Narayana Guru at Arivipuram that has changed the what you call the cosmology and the worldview and the public sphere of Kerala. The Arivipuram installation that happened in 1888. And 1 year after the historic installation by the Guru, Sahodaran was born in a mid-Kerala region in the former princely state called Cochin, in an island in the Arabian Sea, so to say, between the mainland and the Arabian Sea. It is Waipin, the Waipin island. And towards the northern part, you have the panchayat called Pallipuram. So in that Pallipuram panchayat of the Waipin island, Sahodaran was born in 1889. And he passed away again in Kochi in 1968. That is the life period of Sahodaran Ayyappan. And he was one of the most revolutionary and radical leaders of Kerala, who transformed Kerala society and polity and culture and media sphere and even legislative kind of processes in a most dramatic and radical way. In an unprecedented fashion, he has transformed it all in a revolutionary zeal and in a dynamism of praxis, because he was into various walks of life. He was a writer, he was an editor, he was a publisher, he was a cultural activist, he was a community organizer, he was a lead disciple of Narayana Guru, he was a social reformer, he was a minister of state, he was a public works minister in the state of Cochin, he was a long legislator, he had that long career spanning across decades in Kochi, in the Kochi Legislative Council. He was a lead member and an MLC. And also later he became the public works minister of Cochin, and who literally he imagined and reimagined and refashioned the public arenas and the public spaces and even the material spaces, the so-called roads and dams and canals and libraries and bridges and all those things, even the new now completed 3 bridges to Ayyappan Island. All these are the actual the developmental imagination part of the visions of Sahodaran for future, Sahodaran for the people. So he was a pro-people, pro-democracy, and say pro-welfare kind of a socialist thinker. But he was never with the communist left. He has been with the freedom of expression and liberty and equality, and he has remained as a liberal scholar and thinker even to the very last. So that is the brief legacy of Sahodaran, a multi-talented, versatile kind of a public sphere activist, a public figure, and an organic intellectual. That could be the Gramscian term, organic intellectual who stands with the people, who stands with the people who are fighting for justice and truth. That could be a more appropriate term for Sahodaran Ayyappan. So he began as a disciple of Narayana Guru, who actually contested the caste system. And through his writings like Jati Nirnayam and Jati Lakshanam and Jivagarunya Panchagam and Nigamba Dashagam and all, Guru has actually provided the groundwork for a modern public sphere to emerge, for a democratic kind of politics to emerge from the people at the bottom of the society. And it was the Guru who actually broke the caste taboos and rules and mixed himself with the basic people of Kerala, the so-called Dalits of Kerala. So it was Guru who actually pioneered the educational message, the message for education, the message for organization, the message for the liberty, equality, fraternity paradigm in a very compassionate way. So in Anukamba Dashagam, for example, it talks about the greater legacies of Kerala. Kerala's a legacy going back to the Buddha and the gospel of Jesus, and also the new fraternity paradigm of the prophet. So he pays homage to these 3 key teachers of the world, visionaries of the world, the prophet, Jesus, and also the Buddha. So that kind of a polyphonic and secular and pluralistic, compassionate paradigm was created during the caste era, because it was the age of killing caste. We know about the contemporary voices like Ayyappan and others who actually sang about, who proclaimed about the inequalities of caste and how caste is killing, the killing rage of caste, which is there in the songs and spirituals of Dalit orators and leaders like Ayyappan. So that was the context. We also know about the great revolutionary struggles of Mahatma Iyengali, a contemporary of the Guru, a younger contemporary of the Guru. So when the Guru initiated the great messages of education and organization for the untouchables, it was Iyenkali and Ayyappan and others who have struggled hard to create that public domain, to revolutionize the public sphere in Kerala, and to struggle hard against the age-old inequality. So this was the context when Sahodaran was having his education in early 20th century Kerala. He was born in Cherai in Pallipuram in Ayyappan Island in Kochi. And he was educated mostly, his school education was mostly in Kochi. And then he went to Calicut for his, then it was the Basel Mission College. Now it is called Malabar Christian College. So he went to the Basel Missionaries College in Calicut for his intermediate, and then he went to Madras because Madras was part of that. Malabar and all. It was having that educational system, and Malabar was part of the Madras presidency then. So he went, it was very accessible for a person in Kochi to go to this British resident province of Madras. So he tried for his first degree in Madras MCC, Madras Christian College, and also in Presidency College. He tried to pursue his undergraduate studies for the first degree. He struggled hard, but he was also facing many problems of caste and class and socioeconomic barriers. Many problems were there. So he was mostly disillusioned during the times in Madras, in MCC and Presidency College and all. But once the Guru visited Madras, and he provided some kind of hope and a belief in the human and in the future of human deliverance. He kindled in this young student, and this disappointed student, he was into reading of metaphysics and the Puranas and Gita and all those Hindu scriptures, but somehow the critical spirit of the Guru, the critical humanism of the Guru, he rekindled the spirit of, because of various barriers. As I told you, the caste inequality was on the rise. From the school days onwards, he was experiencing the difficulty for an Avarna boy to go to school and go to college and everything. Both social and economic problems and inequalities were there. Mostly it was propelled by the social outcastedness of the Avarna people because of their Buddhist and Ajivaka legacies, non-Brahminical legacies. Brahmanism and Brahminical classes have been punishing them continuously and intimidating and threatening them as a young student. So he was into a very sad affair of states in the beginning of his college days, but somehow the meeting with the Guru at that Madras hostel, students' hostel, it provided a break. We have many autobiographical narratives by Sahodaran himself are there as fragments in many of his other works, but we have biographies, formal complete biographies by Professor M.K. Sanu, and also the close associate and junior advocate of Sahodaran, Advocate K.A. Subramaniam. They have recorded everything about his life story, life history. The biographies are written. The first biography was by Vadayar Vasuvaidyar, but unfortunately it was published during the lifetime of Sahodaran, but unfortunately that's not available today. We have K. S. Subramaniam and M. K. Sanu and C. R. Keshavan Vaidyar and G. Priyadarshan and plenty of others who have written. Many new biographies are also there in Malayalam as far as Sahodaran's life and struggles are concerned. I'm also part of that legacy in the sense that in 2012 I published that book in English on Sahodaran, which is a short critical biography of Sahodaran and a compilation of his works, translated extracts from his prose poetry and speeches, which is titled Sahodaran Ayyappan Towards a Democratic Future, from other books Calicut published in 2012, which I would like you to go through. It's available online from the Amazon and Flipkart and all. You can have it also. So anyway, now we have plenty of biographies. And all these biographies, they tell us the kind of struggles and transformations and the kind of agonies and pains that have gone into the making of this modern man called Sahodaran. So after his meeting with the guru, he came back to Kerala, and he was working as a teacher in many schools because he was fortunate to have English education. His elder brother, the elder brother of Kumbalattu Parambil Vaidya, he was born in that household called Kumbalattu Parambil in Cherai in Vaipin. So his father, he died in a very young age when he was such a small boy. But his elder brother, he provided encouragement for his education, and he was the guardian of this child. So fortunately, he got English education, and that's the difference that we see in Southern. The Guru himself, as early as 1914 itself, he acknowledged that it is the British who gave us sannyasam, the Avarnas, because he problematized the Avarna subject position and the Shudra subject position. And he proclaimed that it is the British who gave us sannyasam because if it was in the time of Ram Raj, or if it was in the time of Rama, he said, I would have been beheaded by or killed by the Lord himself, because what is happening to Shambhuga in Ramraj, we all know about the fate of Shambhugas or the Shudras in Ramraj. So this historic statement actually provides the insight and the critical understanding about the context. So Sahodaran was fortunate. So Guru has never learned English language. He never got an opportunity to study English language, and he has never spoken and written in English language. But he himself has admitted that it is the British, or he was providing a critical appraisal and defense, a critical defense of English and modernity at large. He was appreciating the values of modernity, and he was rejecting the Ramraj and the Indian hegemonic system, the caste system, and the Varnashrama Dharma project, or the Vedic Varnashrama Chaturvarnya system. As such, he was absolutely rejecting it all. So that was the context, and that is how Sahodaran was initiated into English language. And since he studied about Western philosophy and rationalism and logic and all, he had also that kind of a gradual education in philosophy and rational thought in particular. So that's how in his mature career you find him in his youth and in his grown-up years. After this disillusionment in his intermediate state, you find him as a blooming intellectual and a revolutionary and a rational thinker. So Sahodaran has even superseded his guru. He has also critically engaged with the guru, and also he has critically reinterpreted the guru in the new light of modernity. So that's why when the guru said, Guru wrote Daiva Dashakam in the 1916-17 period, Sahodaran was eager to write a supplement or complement to that in Science Dashakam. Sahodaran came up with a poem, 10 verses in praise of science, when the Guru wrote 10 praises, 10 verses in about the godly or the divine. So he was very much eager, and he was very prompt and clever, and also ingenious in providing a critical kind of complementary inputs to the discourse initiated by the Guru. So he was a radical reinterpreter of the Guru, and the Guru himself has acknowledged his critical defiance and that organic nature of his critique. For example, when the people complained about Sahodaran to Guru by saying that he is deviating from the philosophy of the Guru. about the oneness of the human and the oneness of caste and the oneness of God and so on and so forth. Because Guru had this dictum called one God, one caste, and one religion for humanity. That was the slogan that was given to the people at the wake of the 20th century by the Guru. Sahodaran actually critically reinterpreted it as no God, no caste, and no religion. No God, no religion, and no caste. That was, but you need something. But you need something in a poem called The Ethics, Dharma or The Ethics. We have it in our translation. You can see that in that poem called Dharma or Ethics, Sahodaran reinterpreted the Guru and he rewrote it in this way: no caste, no religion, no God, but you need something called ethics. But ethics, and ethics most appropriately and accordingly. Most appropriately and accordingly, you need ethics, ethics, and ethics. As a Sharana mantra of Buddhism. 3 times he repeats it. Venam dharmam, Venam dharmam, Venam dharmam, yathochitam. That is a statement in the poem called Dhammam, or the Dharma, or the ethics of the Buddha as taught by the Buddha. And also in a later poem, this was written in 1920s, soon after the Guru's slogans came to public sphere. But in 1940s, late 1940s, when he wrote a kind of public welcome to the philosophy of Ambedkar, by introducing Ambedkarism to Kerala. It was in 1940s, late 1940s, when the Constitutional Committee was drafting the Constitution, when the moment when Ambedkar was appointed as the invited and appointed as the chief architect of Indian Constitution, that drafting committee, the chairman, when he became the chairman of the drafting committee of the Constitution, Sahodaran wrote a public poem and he published it in Kerala about the teachings of Ambedkar. The poem is titled Jati Bharatam, Caste India, in which he salutes Ambedkar as the codifier, as the jurist of future, as the jurist of India, which future India and the future world would salute. That was the statement, with a heart full of reverence. With a reverent heart, future India would salute you, Ambedkar. Ambedkar, thy name would be chanted as a mantra, a Sharana mantra of Buddhism. Like a Sharana mantra of Buddhism, your name, Ambedkar, that 4-lettered word, Ambedkar enna Tannama Chaturakshari, Mandramai Jabikkum, Nandi Tingunna Hrittajum Bhavi Bharatam. That is the statement that you have in the poem called Jati Bharatam, because Ambedkar has, like Ayyappan rewriting the Guru, Ambedkar has further rewritten. He has completely overhauled and created a new paradigm of democracy in India. From the age-old shackles of Manu, the double-speak of Manusmriti, the casteist or Varna-oriented Brahmanical law of the Middle Ages in India, especially after the fall of the great Buddhist Mauryan emperors, Ashoka and the Mauryas. It was the Sunga who usurped into power, the Sunga dynasty, the Brahmanical dynasty, through cheat and usurpation and murder, third-rate cheat and murder. Pushyamitra Sunga, he came to power, killing, assassinating his own Buddhist Mauryan emperor, Brihadratha Maurya. And that is how Manusmriti was codified, according to Ambedkar himself, to actually legitimize the killing done by a Brahman. He was a Brahman, Sunga, Pushyamitra Sunga. So that kind of a revolutionary paradigm shift Sahodaran identified in the constitution of India, and he was the first public figure, the first writer, the first intellectual to acknowledge the contributions of Ambedkar and introduce Ambedkar into Kerala in particular through that poem Jati Bharatam, caste India. And also he talks about the importance of social justice, the importance of affirmative action, social justice, the egalitarian paradigm that is opened up in a legal fashion by Baker at the level of the Union of India on a national plane. And the debate on social justice at the international level, it was also elaborated by Sahodaran in that same poem. So this poem is only an example, an illustrative sample to understand the kind of critical debates and the kind of epistemological shifts and transformations that he was trying to bring into the psyche and public culture and the political sphere of Kerala. So anyway, he was such a revolutionary poet. And in his poems, especially published in early 20th century, in 1934, he published his poetry as an anthology from that Sharada Book Depot, which was run by Mrs. Kumaranashan from Tonnakel. So in the 1934 volume called Verses, Padyakrudigal, you have the arrangement into different cantos or different kandas or cantos. So it is for the first time that you find a Yukti Kanda and a Raja Kanda and a Buddha Kanda in the poetry of Kerala. So in Malayalam language, in modern times, it was Sahodaran who initiated the discourse of ethics, the discourse of reason, because even in poetry, he was following intelligence and reason or rationality, in addition to the emotional appeal of poetry. He was, of course, into embellishment and analogies and comparisons and figures of speeches and all the flowery kind of embellishment of poetry. At the same time, he was also into very reasonable and very rational kind of discourse and critical discourse even in his poetry. So that's the difference, the cultural difference that you find in his literature and poetry or poetics at large. So poetics was very much part of his politics, or politics and poetics. You will find a perfect blending and fusion and unison in the writings, especially in the poetic works, in the verses of Sahodaran Ayyappan. So as the verses of the Guru and that of Mulur and Pandit Karuppan of Kochi, you find the life struggles and politics at large reflected in a very compassionate and aesthetic way in the poetry of these poets, especially from Mulur and Guru to Pandit Karuppan, Ashan and Sahodaran. You find in Sahodaran in particular, in Pandit Karuppan, Mulur and Sahodaran in particular, because Ashan was more into a kind of sophisticated and aesthetic kind of a poet, because he was acceptable to the caste Hindu common sense as well. But these poets, these Bahujan poets, Mulur, Karuppan, and Sahodaran in particular, Sahodaran specifically, more specifically, he was into a new radical poetics of politics. Or his aesthetics was shaped at large by politics, and that politics was politics of his writing, or politics of his poetics was able to transform society at large. That is the power of his poetic work. So he was creating an aesthetic vision which is very much political as well, which is very much transformative or revolutionary in the cultural sphere, in the linguistic and cultural aesthetic sphere of Kerala. So he has transformed from the rudiments of life and culture and civilization in Kerala. He has tried to transform the aesthetics and poetics of Malayalam and Kerala, the language and culture and literature and poetry, into a more egalitarian and transformative democratic kind of discourse. So this is in tandem with his struggles in the social and political spheres as well. So in the social sphere, he was into a lot of social protests and campaigns and agitations and democratic struggles. He was always for democratic and peaceful struggles in accordance with the law and the what you call greater liberal human values of the society and the world. He was acknowledging that liberal humanism of the West in particular. So he never broke the law. He was a minister also. Later in his career, he was a legislator. And also he was given plenty of awards. Even by the colonial state, he was given all those awards, Rao Bahadur, and plenty of things for his legislative career, long career. Cochin Legislative Council was started only in 1925. From 1926 onwards, Pandit Karuppan was an MLC. And he brought all those Avarnas and the Dalits in particular, P.C. Chanjan and P.K. Vallon and others. And Sahodaran was part of that legislative council from at least 1928. And from 28 onwards, he was introducing the bills and establishing certain acts in the legislature towards the liberation and towards the achievement of democratic rights for the basic people, especially the Dalits and the other Avarnas in Kochi. So as a social, before coming to his political career, let us also see some of his social visions and interventions. So as a social revolutionary, he was into something called the anti-caste movement, which was inaugurated by the Guru himself. It was the Guru who gave all the blessings to all the social revolutionary activities of Sahodaran. And in 1917, he organized something called the interdining program, the interdining program at Cherai, the 1917 interdining campaign, and also that was established as a ritualistic ceremony or program in which he interdined. He broke the taboos of the caste system. Until then, that kind of practice was never allowed. It was seen as something most heinous and criminal an activity, breaking the caste barriers and interdining with those people who were, especially the Dalits, who were supposed to be further below the caste hierarchy. It was the graded inequality of Varnashrama Dharma, the divide and rule policy, which again we will find a severe critique in most of his writing, in prose writing, and in poetry and in editorials. Everywhere you find the furious rational critique of this caste and Varna regime, the Varnashrama Dharma regime, the Smriti Shruti Purana imperial textuality of internal imperialism called Hindu colonialism. Another disciple, Swami Dharmatirtha, John Dharmatirtha, he has actually critically elaborated that concept in the 1940s, internal imperialism, internal colonialism, or Hindu colonialism of India as an internal imperialism. So Sahodaran broke that internal imperial caste structure and taboos associated with mixing up with the most downtrodden people, because that was the core of the teachings of the Guru. And also it comes from the Buddha as well. From the time of the Buddha, we have that struggle against the Varnashrama Dharma and caste system. And Guru himself is imagined as a modern Buddha of Kerala by none other than Sahodaran. Srinarayana Buddhന്റെ ധർമ്മരശ്മികളേൽക്കയാൽ ഉണരുന്ന ജനം അങ്ങയെ ഉണർത്തുന്നിതാദരാൽ എന്ന് in രാജാവിന് പ്രത്യക്ഷ പത്രം, an open letter to the king, the ruling king of Cochin, Maharaja of Cochin. He wrote in the 1920s, late 1920s, that the people are being enlightened by the modern Buddha, the Narayana Buddha, none other than Narayana Guru himself. And even before him, it was Mulu who inaugurated that analogy of comparing his Guru with that of the Buddha. Buddhanu vitramel jadikkaradhirnu shuddhanayittilla enna vannam. In comparison with the statement of Satyavrata Swami on a Guru's statement about Satyavrata losing his caste. Look, Satyavrata, he is casteless, and even I am not near him. in avoiding or in abstaining from the consciousness of casteism, said the Guru. And Mulur has versified it in his poetry. So Mulur initiated that analogy of comparing the Guru with the Buddha. Pandit Karuppan of Kochi, a great revolutionary poet, a Baujan poet, who in Jadikumi he has literally, poetically and literally, metaphorically and literally, he has demolished the Varnashrama Vedic obscurantism, and he compared the Guru with the Buddha. ജ്ഞാനപ്പൈമ്പാൽ കടൽ തിങ്കളായി പരാഗവേ പൊങ്ങി വിളങ്ങുന്ന ശ്രീനാരായണ ബുദ്ധദേവൻ. That's the statement of Pandit Karuppan. So following that Bahujan legacy of poets in Kerala, Avarna poets, lead Avarna poets in modern times, Mulur and Karuppan, Sahodaran has also compared his own Guru with that of the Buddha. The words of the Buddha in particular, and the words of the Guru and the words of the Buddha, they are the same, and they are enlightening and awakening the people. That's the statement you have in the open letter to the king, written to the Maharaja of Cochin, and published in the late 1920s and early 1930s, at least. It's there in his 1934 volume. So it was composed and published as a single piece in late 1920s. So he was campaigning against all the social evils, the untouchability practices, the kind of Kavudindal and Ashwadi Bharani and Kodungalur Urapata and all those things. He was going to Palani and all those ritualistic degradations, the social stigmas and taboos and untouchability practices. Everything was it was being critically explored, and an awareness against the caste Hindu common sense was created through his writing. And in 1970 he broke that taboo of intercaste dining, and he dined with the Dalit brethren. And that actually is the most important luminary manifestation of the philosophy of the Guru, because only when the mid caste and the middle caste and the Avarna, upper echelons of the Avarna, they become one with the lowest strata of the society, that is the Pulayas and the Parayas and the Dalits in Kerala. Only when the Iravas and other OBCs or what you call the stratified Avarnas, when they become one among the lowest strata, the Pulaya in particular, or the Paraya in particular, then only they can become human. That was the philosophy. Only Sahodaran has acknowledged it. And the Guru himself, he lived like that. He was adopting the Dalit children, and he was with them, living with them, eating with them, cooking and living and eating with them. And he was educating them in his own ashrams and his own huts. So that philosophy and praxis, social praxis and democratic vision of egalitarianism and inclusion of the Guru, that was taken up by Sahodaran on a large-scale protest kind of thing, as an anti-caste kind of cultural activism and social intervention, and he practiced it in 1917. 29th May, they broke that traditional custom, but he had to experience severe beating, severe backlashes, even from the so-called minor elites of his own community. From the Iravas themselves, he faced all the fury, because that was the structure of the caste system. If anybody in a particular caste is agitating, he will be suppressed by his own people. That is how Brahmanism operated. The divide and rule strategy was the internal imperialism was furious then, and as it is coming back now. Even today you have that lynching and the controlling and everything. It's making a second coming now. The Varnashrama Dharma Manusmriti regime is coming back. Anyway, so that was and he broke that custom, and then he faced severe backlashes, even social exclusion and ostracism and beating. And people were, even when he campaigned against the Bharanipata and Purapata in Kodungalur Kav, people even they tried to assassinate him. He was saved by a Muslim trader by the Cheraman Palli. What we have Cheraman Palli today. He was chased by that mob of Baranipat mob, and that Muslim trader actually he saved the life of Sahodaran Ayyappan by providing shelter in his own shop. So that kind, there were even attempts on his life. There were many, as Pagil Appachan has faced many life threats and attempts. Sahodaran has also faced such severe kind of backlashes from his own people and his own countrymen and his own brothers. But he has never abandoned the paradigm of fraternity and brotherhood. And that's one of the core aspects of his philosophy. Like the teachings, the compassionate teachings of the Buddha and out of the Guru. Fraternity or Sahodaryam. That's why he, from 1917 onwards, when he started that journal, he also named it as Sahodaran. And that became his synonym. Another synonym is Pulain Ayyappan. Pulain Ayyappan and Sahodaran Ayyappan. You have only two writers, or very few writers from the so-called non-Dalit categories from the Avarna who are called Pulain. Though they are not Pulains, they are basically from the Irava or Thia social strata, but they are called Pulain. Pulain Ayyappan is one, that is Sahodaran Ayyappan. And in Malabar, you have, in 19th century itself, you have that Pulain Kunyambu, who is none other than Potheri Kunyambu, the author of one of the earliest novels in Kerala, Saraswati Vijay. So only in Potheri Kunyambu and Sahodaran Ayyappan, you have that complete, what you call fraternity paradigm that is developed with the most downtrodden people in Kerala, akin to the philosophy, the core teaching of the Guru. Only when the Iravas, only when they become Pulaya, they can be human. That is the core philosophy, which was practiced on a regular basis, on with a clean propaganda, with a clear statement of objectives by Sahodaran. And that is what we have in the interdining of 1917. So this is only one example. So likewise, he organized the Mishra Bhojana Sangham, Mishra Vivaha Sangham, Society for the Intermarriage, Society for Interdining, then the Yuktivadi Sangham of Kerala, the rationalization of Kerala. As a process of modern democratization of Kerala, rationalism was introduced and inculcated into the public sphere and the psyche of the common people through the writings of Sahodaran. And even Yuktivadi M.C. Joseph or M.R. Ramavarma and Kuttipura Krishnapulla, and all these people, they were actually admirers and followers of Sahodaran. It was Sahodaran, even E.M.S. has written that he read about rationalism and materialism and atheism and all first in Sahodaran's writing, before reading Marx and Engels. So even before reading Marx and Engels, materialism and rationalism and atheism and all, it was there in Kerala. He was the first to introduce the October Revolution in Kerala. In 1917 itself, he was singing about it. In 1919, a poem called Iravol Bodhanam, he talks about the Russian Revolution, the October Revolution, and the revolution that has changed Russia. He was an admirer. During that time, he was an admirer of Lenin. And Lenin was a superhero for him. So he advised that model of Lenin. And the October Revolution, the Communist Revolution that has transformed and created the Soviet Union. In 1919 poem, Iruval Bodhanam, he even uses the term comrades, oh my comrades. That's the address that is used in Iravol Bodhanam in 1919, just 2 years after the October Revolution, 1917 Russian Revolution. And even before the October Revolution, he initiated the anti-caste revolution in the 1917 interdining, which was done on 29th of May in Chennai. So even before the Russian Revolution and after the Russian Revolution, it was Sahodaran who was actually who paved the foundations of the liberal left in Kerala, though he was a liberal democratic kind of a thinker and activist. So as a social revolutionary, he was defined. So he, from 1917 onwards, he was running that Sahodaran journal. First, it was a journal, a weekly of sort, and then it was made into a daily, or newspaper daily, and then he continued it for decades till the 1950s, late 1950s, till he became really old and retired. He was running that daily with the help of K. Subramaniam and others. And then he was also very much active with the community work, community organization, something called the community. So Sahodaryam has been in the making. Fraternity paradigm, the Maitri, basically it is the Maitri, the unconditional fraternity with the whole world and the whole living and non-living beings of this cosmos. That is what greater Sahodarya or greater Maitri of fraternity is all about. It's not just from the French Revolution that he has taken the model, as Ambedkar himself did, and declared towards the end of his life. It's also from the Sangha, the Vinay Pitaka, and the Sangha of the Buddha that both Sahodaran and Ambedkar, they have taken the notion of fraternity. It goes much beyond the French fraternity into the Maitri, the universal brotherhood, the universal fraternity paradigm of Maitri or compassion, and Nigamba of the Guru and the Maitri of the Buddha himself. So that kind of a global vision, that kind of a universal vision, a cosmic vision and a cosmology Sahodaran was having, and he was trying to manifest it in his words and in his writings and in his social interventions throughout his life. So from 1929 onwards, they have established another organization called Yuktivadi Sangham. They had the Mishra Vivaha Sangham, the Mishra Bhojana Sangham, then the Sahodara Sangham, and then the Yuktivada Sangham, 1929 onwards. And their journal was, Yuktivadi journal was there even before that, even before 1929. So he worked along with Ramavarma Tamban and MC Joseph and Kutipura and others, and they have all acknowledged it. Even Joseph Mundasheri and Keshavdev and others, they call him Sahodaran Master, my master. Govindan and Keshavdev, they have written about my master. It's an essays on Sahodaran. So even like Narayana Guru, he was able to draw a lot of disciples and students and enthusiasts from various social sections, cutting across caste and religion and creed and socio or economic barriers. He was able to create and develop and maintain a larger fraternity paradigm with all the leading people of his generation and the younger generation in particular, because he was giving space to Keshavdev, not just Keshavdev, but to Bashir also, and also to Ponikara Rafi and Kadamangalam, and even C.J. Thomas has acknowledged his prowess as an editor. We have that famous side profile picture of Sahodaran in his towards the end of his life, because of certain eye problems. He was wearing the dark glasses, the sunglasses. So that profile in sunglasses, it is taken by C.J. Thomas himself. So he was into that kind of greater fraternity paradigm, and he was practicing the Maitri and compassion and Ikamba of his gurus. So apart from this, he was a leader of the SNDP movement, Sri Narayana movement. He was a secretary and he was a president of that movement. And he initiated many things to include the other Bahujans and Dalit Bahujans into the fold, and to resist the Hindu Mahamandalam, the consolidation based on the hegemonic religion. When in 1929, when Madan Mohan Malaviya came here in Kerala, and he advocated the chanting of Ram Mantra or Jai Sri Ram, he outrightly, Sahodaran and his fellows, they outrightly rejected it and claimed that, retorted that Ram who killed Shambhuga, Ram who killed Bali, he can never be a leader or a god or even a human being. Because in early 1900 itself, in Jivagarunya Panchagam and Anigamba Dashakam and all, the Guru has written explicitly that the killer is an animal. The killer is not human. The killer is not even human. How can he become the god? He's worse than a carnivorous animal. That's the statement of the Guru in Jivagarunya Panchagam. കൊല്ലുന്നവനില്ല ശരണ്യത മറ്റെല്ലാവിധ നന്മയുമാർന്നിട്ടിലും കൊല്ലായികിലവൻ ഗുണമുള്ളവുമാൻ അല്ലായെങ്കിൽ മൃഗത്തിനു തുല്യനവൻ കൊല്ലായികിലവൻ ഗുണമുള്ളവുമാൻ അല്ലായെങ്കിൽ മൃഗത്തിന് തുല്യനവൻ. The killer has no virtue, however clever and elite he is, and he's equal to an animal. He's not even a human being. That's the clear statement in verse by the Guru in Jivagarunya Panchakam. So Sahodaran was able to radically develop that kind of a critique, the critique of the killing gods, the critique of the killing narratives, the narratives of genocide and othering, demonization, animalization, and othering. He was able to develop it, and even to Gandhi. When Gandhiji came to Kerala many times to see, to visit the Vaikam Satyagraha, and he visited the Guru, he had his debate with the Guru on Varnashrama Dharma and all. Even after that, he was not that much convinced. And again, when he came to Kochi, Sahodaran and his friends, they provided a welcome to him. And then he asked Mr. Gandhiji, your Krishna, your Lord Krishna, he was a serial killer as well, wasn't he? This is the question that was. He was a serial killer, your Lord Krishna. He killed his own uncles and many others. So he was a serial killer as well, wasn't he? This was the question. So Gandhi never had that answer. And also he had written that poem, The Message of Gandhi, or the Gandhi Message, Gandhi Sandesham. Gandhi Sandesham was written by Sahodaran when Gandhi went to Kanyakumari temple, and he was denied entry approach to the Sanctum Sanctorum and the Sopan. He was asked, according to his Varna and caste, he was prevented by the Brahman priest, the illiterate Brahman priest of the Kanyakumari temple. And when he prohibited the entry, Gandhi stood there and he went back from there. So this was a shame. This was a most humiliating kind of gesture from the part of Gandhi. And for the people of the whole India, the untouchable millions of India, the Avarnas in India, for the Shudra, and even for the Vaishya, it was shameful, because Gandhi was a Trivarnika. He was part of the top twice born, those who are having the sacred thread and full human rights and educational rights, unlike the Shudra who are denied these things. So he was part of the Trivarnika structure within the Chaturvarnya fold, and even he was denied equal status and opportunity with the Brahman priesthood or Brahmanical patriarchy, as Ambedkar to Sharmila Rage now talks about. So this was a humiliating gesture. Gandhi, who shook the foundations of imperialism, British imperialism, European imperialism, but unfortunately he is licking the feet of internal imperialism or Brahmanical patriarchy in India as a Vaishya. He is seen only as a Vaishya, and he is denied equal entry and opportunity within the public sphere of the worshipping center, the so-called temple. So this was taken by Sahodaran as an insult to the people and democracy at large, egalitarianism at large. And he wrote and composed and published that poem in the 1930s itself, which is called Gandhi Sandesham. നായിലും നാണം കെട്ട് ചവിട്ടുന്ന ബ്രാഹ്മണ പാദം നക്കുന്ന ആഹന്ത the NEM. It's a sad state. Gandhi, you have shaken the foundations of the British Lion, the British imperial queen and her throne, but you have become submissive like a licking dog at the kicking feet of hegemony, Brahmanical patriarchy in India. How sad it is. You must realize it. This was the statement, the most critical and crucial statement of truth done by Sahodaran at that time of Gandhi. So he was a very ardent critique of Gandhi. He saluted him for his public actions and anti-colonial struggles and the spirit of non-violence. But he was against the misuse of non-violence, especially in the Pune Pact, when Ambedkar was forced to submit. While Gandhi went on a hunger strike till death only for eliminating the political right, the representational rights, the basic right of democracy. Democracy is nothing but the politics of representation. Social democracy cannot be made possible without social representation, especially the social inclusion and representation of the excluded and marginalized people, the historically excluded people in particular. So democracy itself is seen by enlightened thinkers of modern thinkers as the politics of representation. But Gandhiji, unfortunately, he never wanted the representation of the most downtrodden people. So he was bent against that, and he went for a hunger strike. He declared it till the end. He never declared it till the end, till his death, even against the British colonial regime. But he declared a hunger strike till his death against the political representation of the Dalits, that is the Pune Pact. Ambedkar, because of his humanity, because out of his humanitarian concerns, he submitted because the life of another great leader was in peril. And that may cause severe civil strife in the country. That's why he submitted. And Sahodaran, at that time, he criticized it severely, Gandhi's what you call political blackmailing or misusing of ahimsa principles of non-violence in a most cruel and cunning way against the cause of democracy, and he termed it as Pune Patani, in an ironic expression that has set the tone and tenure of media language or press language, journalistic language in Kerala, the prose journalism of Kerala. He used that term Pune poverty or Pune Patani or Pune starvation to mock and dig ironically and critique ironically the move, the anti-democratic move by Gandhi against the Pact of Democracy, which was offered by even the colonial regime. Ramsay MacDonald, he was the British Prime Minister. Ramsay MacDonald, he was willing to give that political representation to the unrepresented, but Gandhiji, he never wanted to create a rift within the so-called Hinduism and our Nashrama Dharma, and he wanted the untouchables to be very much part of the Hindu fold so that they can remain a majority. So this was severely criticized by. This is only an instance. You have plenty of editorials and commentaries, news analysis, and many reports. He has been reporting all the Gandhi Ambedkar debates. He was reporting everything about the Dravidian movement and EVR and others. He was reporting everything about M.N. Roy and socialism. He was reporting and writing continuously about Jayaprakash Narayan and the Indian socialist kind of movements. And he was also keenly interested, even in a very critical way. He was critically detached. He was critiquing at the same time he was upholding the liberal human values that was there within Nehruvian socialism in India. He introduced the Bolshevik Russian Revolution, the communist egalitarian system to India and Kerala in particular. In Kerala Bhasha, he wrote about that Ulbodhanam, Saghakale, Iravolbodhanam of 1919. But at the same time, he was very much critical about the nationalist movement and the hegemonic Brahmanical nationalism that was there, and also about the cultural nationalism using the images of Ram and Ram Raj and Gram Swaraj and Harijan and all those Vaishnavite, Ramified terms. He was very much critical about all those things. And even before Ambedkar was made into a constitutional head, in the 1930s onwards, when Ambedkar began all his interventions in the northern public sphere, at the national level, Sahodaran was very much prompt and quick in responding to it and reporting it in Kerala, and he was providing a live commentary of the Gandhi-Ambedkar debates on democracy and the representation and inclusion of the people. So he has provided immense models for nation making and the critical notion of nationalism. He was against the jingoistic ultra-nationalism, the Brahmanical nationalism that was there, but he was for a very democratic, inclusive policy making, a policy making that can create a democratic paradigm of representation and real inclusion of the real social majority of the people in India. And that is how he said, my political doctrine is nothing but democracy, nothing but social inclusion and representation, community representation. That's the only panacea, because India was not just a class divided society, but it was a casteist and divided on caste lines. Therefore, the divided and differentiated undermined castes in particular, they must get their due shares and the denied shares, and there should be an equal opportunity. First, let there be an equal opportunity for representation and inclusion, and then ensure their just representation, and then let us come to a level of humanity and dissolve everything into one and become a larger humanity. And even he was into thinking about politics without parties, a democratic politics without party. He was into a kind of liberal, what you call social democracy, and also participatory forms of democracy. So he was, at the same time, he was also critical about the party politics, because after the experiments in the Cochin Legislative Assembly and all, and also soon after the independence here in India as a whole, he was disillusioned. In late 1950s, he was disillusioned with the party politics at large. And then he wrote about the withering away of the party, not about the withering away of the state, as the communists have done, but the withering away of the party politics and a direct form of democracy. That was also imagined by Sahodaran. So he was imagining about democracy, and the parliamentary model was accepted for him, but he experimented with it, and he also critiqued it, because the party politics was deviating into some kind of what you call vulgar games. The left, the right, and the center, they have merged into one. They are all having their own what you call complicit and narrow agendas, and there is not much difference between the policies and agendas and the what you call the promises of the left and the right. That has happened even in recent times. It's a very valid kind of point, because the far right and their agendas against the constitution that can dismantle the constitution from the base, that is being propagated and established and carried out by the people in the left. Unfortunately, what happened during the 2018 Vishwasi Lahala, or Tindari Lahala, or Shudra Lahala, as it is called and termed by critics. What happened during that time under the pressure tactics, the representational base, the social justice paradigm of the constitution was shattered, completely undone, by including the incompatible category of economic criterion in it. An economic reservation was passed under the pressure tactics when the chief minister himself was he was abused in public by calling caste names and caste slurs. by women, and that Devasam ordinance was passed. And what is the reality of the Devasam board? 85% was completely filled in by a particular caste group, and 10 more percent was given in economic logic, which is against the social justice paradigm of the constitution, which is anti-constitutional, which is against the what you call the statistics of representation, because over-representation is everywhere. The historically advantaged caste Hindu forces, the forward communities, they are having over-representation in every public sphere, every public education sector, and all the walks of public sphere. Even we need not talk about the aided sector or the private sector and the private institutions. So everywhere the overrepresented, the historically monopoly groups, they are increasing their monopolies in power and positions in an anti-constitutional way, even dismantling the ethics, the social justice foundation of the Constitution. This has happened. So this kind of a vulgar foul game, Sahodaran identified in the 1950s itself, and that's why he advocates and he dreams about a new democracy without the party rules and the political party system. The political parties must wither away, and a new direct representation of the people. That kind of we must think, at least there are problems. How can we replace the parliamentary model that we are running now, and what all alternatives are to be done, what all new visions and processes of democracy are to be imagined. It is to be thought out, argues Sahodaran in the 1950s itself. So he was a keen thinker. From Lenin, he has grown to Abraham Lincoln. From Lenin to Lincoln, you have that kind of a trajectory. Lincoln, who has defined democracy as for the people, by the people, and of the people. തങ്ങളാൽ തങ്ങൾ ഭരിക്കുന്ന മംഗല്യപൂർണ്ണ ഭരണരീതി. Even in his poetry and poetics, Sahodaran was versifying politics. This is a perfect example in the letter to the Queen. And in the open letter to the king, he talks about, he gives them democratic visions and education in particular. Democratic literacy was inculcated in early 20th century by Sahodaran, but unfortunately, it's all in peril. The foundation of democracy and ethics in the country, the book of truth and justice in the country, it is under peril. It is under unilateral attack from many corners, many monopoly corners in this country, from both the right and left. It is being dismantled. So this is the right context to discuss more about the abiding relevance and the futuristic legacy. He has written a poem called The Future, Bhavi. Many things we need to do many things in future. We are supposed to look towards the future and the posterity and the progress of humanity, and not just humanity, but this whole world, in Maitri and compassion and Nigamba and fraternity. So this is the right juncture to initiate new discourses and critical debates and reappraisals of the philosophy, the democratic visions of Sahodaran. And I'm really thankful for you for the patient listening.